What's going on, people? I am Dukedobbins, FTW, and I never really got around to playing Anthem. I was only 2 missions deep by the time an overwhelming critical consensus had emerged. This game was yet another crushing disappointment. Reviewers skewered it methodically.
Anthem, made by BioWare's A-Team, is a colossal disappointment.
It can't settle on what it wants to be good at, so winds up being either mediocre or bad at most things it attempts.
But currently, the game has so many issues technically that it feels like ultimately an incredible disappointment.
The gunplay was dull, the missions repetitive, it felt rushed and incomplete. The story was meh, with cutscenes that were too long, and that's when the game was working as intended, which it rarely was. Players reported obnoxiously long loading screens, broken loot drops, game crashes, console sabotage, and a wide variety of other wacky bugs that you can imagine might accompany such a clusterfuck. Thus I was faced with a dilemma. Do I sink 12 hours into this game that I already know I won't enjoy, like delivering a stillborn child? Of course not. But then we run into a logic problem that plagues us all in this situation. If you've already spent the money on the game, the thinking goes, you are obliged to play it to at least get your money's worth out of it, right? When they aren't arguing in comment sections online, gamers are actually very rational people. Having been raised in the fires of RTS, RPGs, and MMOs, we know what it means to have a play go south after you've committed resources. And we're naturally inclined to make the most of an adverse situation. But the industry has learned to take advantage of that willpower, and cynically use it against us. Which is why these kind of launches have become all too familiar over the last few years. Battlefield 4, Halo MCC, the original Division, No Man's Sky, Sea of Thieves, Fallout 76, Destiny, Destiny 2, so many others. In each case, they all stick to a similar script. Spend 2 years hyping it, then launch, broken or incomplete. Savor that you've already sold it to everyone. Spend a year finishing the game, and then watch a portion of the fanbase come crawling back to buy microtransactions while critics praise you for dedication and, quote, turning things around. The real question is why anyone was even surprised by the state of Anthem's launch. This is, after all, the new normal. Not to mention BioWare's track record specifically, Andromeda, Mass Effect 3, and of course KOTOR 2, which they not only gave a terribly awkward, abrupt ending that left 10-year-old me feeling empty and confused, but which I found out later, they also cut an entire planet out of just to ship on time. Regardless, publishers are clearly convinced this is the most profitable way to do business. And why wouldn't they be? With the extravagant 2-year marketing campaigns, the pre-orders reeling you in with the different special versions that let you play a day earlier than your friends so you can rub it in their faces, they get you invested in these games emotionally and financially long before release, making it that much more difficult to extricate yourself from the situation when you inevitably discover that this game isn't Disneyland, it's Vietnam. Thus, publishers have monetized the sunk cost fallacy. What is the sunk cost fallacy? It's the toxic relationship you stay in just because you've already been together so long. It's the food you eat at a restaurant even though you're full and it's making you sick just so you can get your money's worth. It's playing Fortnite even after you're bored of it because you've already spent so much on skins that it'd feel wasteful to quit. It's spending hours playing a game you don't enjoy just so you can say the $60 was worth it. Or, as it was more technically defined in a paper published in the Journal of Psychological Science, the sunk cost effect is the general tendency for people to continue an endeavor or continue consuming or pursuing an option if they've invested time or money or some resource in it. That effect becomes a fallacy if it's pushing you to do things that are making you unhappy or worse off. When these games suck eggs to play, putting in hours of unenjoyable gameplay doesn't turn the L you took buying the shit into a W. It's just another L. 2 L's don't make a right. Now, of course, this is the part where I say just get a refund, get your money back. But the truth is, we are all too lazy, ADHD, and in many cases, simply too stupid to do that. Particularly in the era of digital purchases when they have intentionally made the refund process difficult and confusing to discourage you. They play us like rats in a maze. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Playtime's over. Recently, a post on the Anthem subreddit arguing players should boycott the game blew up, with thousands of gamers agreeing to log off for a week in an effort to protest the game's BS. But we are way past the point where week-long silent treatments are going to turn things around. It's time to start looking for a new place. The only smart thing for any Anthem player to do at this point is walk away. For good. Don't keep logging on once and every now and then to see if it's better. Don't give them a dime for microtransactions, obviously. And don't hold out hope and wait till you see some article saying everything's good now so you can get back on and pretend this never happened. Because then we are only setting ourselves up for this to happen again and again and again. It's not about your relationship with Anthem, it's about your relationship with EA and every other publisher. This is an abusive relationship, and the longer you spend trying to make it work, covering up your bruises and black eyes with makeup, telling the cops to fuck off every time your neighbors report shattered glass and screaming, caving to your abuser's tears and pathetic insistence that this was the last time, the longer you will remain miserable. The status quo cannot continue. It's time for a real protest. And if you play Anthem ever again, or God forbid buy a skin on that game, you are what we call a scab, a self-interested douche who crosses the picket line and screws over the cause of everyone else trying to make the world a better, more fair place. And I'm not saying you should do it for anyone else. Do it for yourself, like the wolf that gnaws off its own leg to escape the hunter's trap. Consider also that Anthem's abandonment is likely in BioWare's best interests as well. EA's history is littered with the corpses of studios that got taken out to pasture after a fuck-up. You have to wonder if BioWare isn't inching closer to the chopping block. Is doubling down on Anthem really the smartest business move? Don't get me wrong, they have an obligation to fix the game, but beyond that, treating this as a games-as-a-service experience for the next 2 years, do they really expect to see a high return on investment for every dollar spent on this game that's already on life support, just so that they can limp along into eventual obscurity like No Man's Sky or Fallout 76? The better strategy is staring everyone in the faces. It's taking the best parts of what you have and turning it into something new. Overwatch was supposed to be a PvE story game. Apex Legends was supposed to be Titanfall 3. Fortnite was a wave defense game. Remarkably, 3 of the most popular titles to come out in the last few years all began as failed projects. Each one a beautiful phoenix rising from the ashes of a fuck-up. What if instead of devoting the next 2 years or more of their resources of some of the top talent in the industry to this wet fart of a game, BioWare instead salvaged the loot and progression mechanics, the always online and seamless matchmaking features, the mobility, the open world, and set about to create what I know would be the greatest looter shooter of all time, KOTOR 3. Knights of the Old Republic, the spiritual predecessor to Mass Effect, my all-time favorite game series, has deserved a proper sequel for some time. It was started, then scrapped, rumored, then denied. The MMO comes out and it's alright, but it doesn't do that great, because what made KOTOR great was it being the first mature and gritty piece of Star Wars content in both style and substance, whereas the Old Republic was doing Disney cartoons before Disney even took over. Everyone always wanted to play KOTOR with their friends. I remember that feeling intensely. Back then, World of Warcraft was what Fortnite is today, so it's easy to imagine why they went the MMO route, as Elder Scrolls later would as well for the same reason. But incredible single-player games don't necessarily translate into great MMOs, because the nature of an MMO waters down a lot of what makes single-player games so great. All gear has to be balanced for PvP, looting has to be balanced to fit fairly into a player economy, stories have to be limited in nature so as not to dramatically impact the world around you, which must remain static for the sake of other players not as far in the story as you are. But that's the beauty of these looter shooters, these shared world shooters, and why they've become so popular these days. When done right, they are a middle ground where you can get the best of both worlds, playing with your friends, but on a game that retains the quality and depth of a single-player RPG. Picture for a second that Fort Tarsis has been reskinned as the Jedi Enclave. Instead of generic-looking Mass Effect rip-off suits, you're strapped up as Mandalorians, Republic Commandos, elite Sith troopers, even goddamned utility droids. Special abilities and force powers mapped to left and right bumper the same way they are now, running raids on Tusken villages and Sith academies, boss fights against Rancors, Crate Dragons, big-ass fish gods, Tyranitex, Storm Beasts, and in the middle of the raid they make you solve some puzzle like in Destiny, except instead of some dumb shit, this time it's one of those nightmare logic problems they used to dish out, that 8-year-old me would get stuck on for 6 hours, practically in tears, because it might as well be a game over screen, so I get my mom to do it, but she can't figure it the fuck out either, and I don't realize you can look up walkthroughs on Google yet, and hell, I don't even know if that's an option in 03. Imagine they randomized the variables and the logic problems so that you couldn't look it up online even today, and they send waves of increasingly powerful enemies to attack your squad while one poor soul is sitting there trying to solve the logic problem, bullets of sweat pouring down their forehead because it's also a bomb that you gotta defuse before it blows up and kills your whole family in real life. Or maybe they simply do a new Mass Effect. Or maybe a free-to-play Anthem Battle Royale. Or maybe something totally different we couldn't even think of right now. What they shouldn't do is double down on Anthem, because everyone loses on that bet. The other day it occurred to me, I suck at chess. If I can't get him on the fool's mate, I usually rage quit. Also if they take my queen. So I read up to try and get a little better, and I came across an interesting discussion on why computers are so much better than real-life players, and I was struck by the answer, which was that computers love to retreat, quoting chess grandmaster and coach Susan Polgar, who says, humans don't like to admit a mistake unless they really have to. And in those borderline cases when it's not obvious that you have to retreat, chess players tend not to. Let's say you move a knight forward towards your opponent's king attacking. Unless you absolutely have to retreat, you rather try to follow up that attack by bringing more pieces to attack your opponent's king. Whereas computers display no such stubbornness. A computer, if it calculates that the best move is to retreat, has absolutely no psychological boundaries holding it back. Now obviously we know computers dominate even the best players today, apparently, specifically because they are willing to unwind moves, to abandon strategies as fast as they are made. And perhaps there is something to be learned in the cold hard logic of a CPU. Maybe we should all come to terms with the fact that the best path forward is a completely new one. The For the Win query of the day is, what do you think will be the next big game launch to fuck up and crash and come out all shitty and piss everybody off? Remember to follow me on Twitter and Discord, links in the description. Thanks for watching. This is Batman, signing out.